The greatest gift that somebody can receive within their lifetime is the gift of love. A Rosebud by Susan Thompson shares a story between two people whose love made their lives worth living. Their love was truly never ending. This is A Rosebud by Susan Thompson. I stared at a worn place in the carpet, and I raised my eyes to stare at the banks of flowers. I wondered when I had seen so many different blossoms together in just one place. I thought for a moment, and I decided. I'd be at funerals. It was several moments before I even remembered where I was at. And I thought, why am I at a funeral? I almost giggled, but then I remembered. I mustn't. I'll go home and I'll tell Brent, and then we can both laugh about it. The thought of the pleasure that we would share, it made me smile until I remembered it's not proper to smile at funerals either. Not at all. The minister spoke in lofty, ethereal terms of heaven and angels, and I wondered if it was really like that. Somehow the thought of spending all eternity seated on a cloud and plucking a harp, it never really appealed to me. I never really thought about it, except for the fact that Brent always said the bit about the angels and the pearly gates was all just a bunch of baloney. I almost smiled when I thought about that too. But then I remembered again. The minister had finished speaking and the soloist had begun to sing. The funeral director moved toward the casket and he opened the lid. The people in the back of the room stood up and began to file slowly towards the front. Most of them paused for a moment besides the open coffin before they moved on. The last to leave the room were my parents, my mother-in-law, and myself. I moved to the casket and I just stared at the face of its occupant. He just looks so natural, murmured my mother-in-law. He just looks like he's asleep. I just stood, staring at the body, my hands gripping the edge of the casket. My mother stood close behind me, and the 6 pallbearers stood to a group on one side, waiting for us to leave. My mother took my arm gently. Come now, dear. The others are waiting for us. We mustn't keep them too long. I followed my mother numbly across the room and out the door. Outside, we were met by a gust of March wind and a shower of last year's dead leaves. I love the spring. I love the spring and the wind and the flowers. I had met Brent in the spring. We had met and we had fallen wildly and wonderfully in love. It had been a year ago. Yes, a year ago. We had been married in June on a chilly, rainy day. But it had been the most beautiful day in the world to us. I remember the first night of our honeymoon. We had run all the way from the car to the motel just so that we wouldn't get wet. And when we were almost to the door, Brent had grabbed me and he kissed me. We stood there for nearly 5 minutes, madly in love and thoroughly drenched. I smiled when I thought about that. And then everyone stared at me. I thought, and then I remembered, this is a funeral. One mustn't smile at funerals. We arrived at the cemetery and there was a big canopy set up over the grave. My family and I were seated on metal folding chairs within the shelter, and the casket was suspended over a hole in front of us. When we were all in place, a silence fell, and the minister began to read from a small black book. A red ribbon place marker attached to the binding of the book slid out from between the pages and fluttered away in the wind. I watched the ribbon. All I could do was hope that tomorrow would be windy and warmer. It would be a Saturday. It would be a Saturday, and Brent and I could go kite flying. Last year, we had taken a big picnic lunch out to a gorgeous grassy hill in the country. Nothing but beautiful blue sky above us. We had flown a kite, and we had run around and laughed and rolled over and over down the hill. We would go again tomorrow. We'd go to the same hill and we'd fly those same kites. I knew Brent would laugh at me when I made the suggestion, but he would go with me anyway. And we'd have a wonderful time. In my mind's eye, I saw him running up over the hill, kite string in his hand, laughing and shouting, his hair blowing in his eyes. I could never imagine Brent growing old and gray. I felt my love for him swelling up inside me, welling up and overflowing, because it was so strong and beautiful. Then the minister began to pray, and I remembered where I was at. The happiness sank inside me because this is a funeral, and no one's happy at funerals. Not ever. The prayer ended, and the benediction was said. The people were leaving, and I got stiffly out of my chair. I walked to the grave, and I took a rosebud from the coffin. I held it to my nose, and I breathed in its fragrance. And then I pressed it to my heart. I just held the flower close, shielding it from the wind. I turned to go, and I found the preacher waiting to speak to me. Your husband was a good man, Mrs. Norris. I assure you that he is in a better place now. God bless you. Thank you, I whispered. All I could do was hurry away from him, across the graveyard and towards the car, stumbling so much because of the tears that blurred my vision. How silly to cry, I thought. I never even cry except at sad movies and at funerals. And then I remembered. I had just been to a funeral.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. I'm sure you recognize this famous signature opening to the 1940 radio series, Superman. Superman has been a hugely popular character since he was introduced by Atomic Comics in 1938. And since then, our fascination with superheroes has only grown. Today, there are many more heroes to follow and love. I'd like to explore our fascination with superheroes by explaining how the superhero story played out in Greek mythology, why we idolize superheroes today, and how superheroes make us better people. First, the superhero story began even before this 1938 Superman comic book. This classic story of rising out of seemingly nowhere and becoming a superhuman hero goes back as far as Greek mythology. According to GreekMythology.com, Hercules was the strongest mortal alive, surpassing even the strength of some gods. Does this seem familiar? It seems to me that Hercules and Superman are extremely familiar in their abilities and stories. And just as Superman had his kryptonite, Hercules lacked in intelligence and had very strong emotions. However, though he often acted out of anger, once he calmed down, Hercules was willing to do penance. This is significant because he is strong enough that no man or God would be able to force him into doing this. So by doing penance, Hercules shows the same sense of justice that Superman often shows. And while doing penance, Hercules shows heroic qualities like patience and courage. Hercules is also willing to go to great lengths to help those he considers friends, much as Spider-Man is willing to help his friends Harry and MJ. And he does do great, courageous acts, despite the fact that everyone believes he is a muscle-bound buffoon, which is how he was seen in many Greek plays, and despite the fact that he is hated by Hera, queen of the gods, because he is the son of her husband Zeus and not her son. And he endures terrible things because of this hatred, which he neither caused nor could do anything about. This bears remarkable resemblance to another hero, Spider-Man, who was constantly dealing with hate from J. Jonah Jameson, who worked on the Daily Bugle newspaper with seemingly no messages besides that Spider-Man is a menace. Now that we know that ancient people idolized ancient superheroes, let's look at why we do this today. There are many reasons why we idolize superheroes, but I believe the most significant one is that they give us something to believe in. John Dorowski, in his thesis for his Master's of Arts degree, said, "Right now, trust in the government is at an all-time low, and big businesses are failing. Superheroes act outside the bounds of law and offer certainty that someone will rise up and save everyone, where government and other institutions cannot." In the same article, the idea is presented that the villains of these stories are projected fears of whatever time period they are told in. In the Greek times, this might have been the wrath of the gods. Today, people fear war, terrorism, bankruptcy, and many other evils we're faced with on a regular basis. And superheroes overcome all of these. Whether they're beating up villains or dealing with personal issues, superheroes always overcome their problems, and seeing that this is possible is an inspiration for us. It's also important that superheroes have not-so-super backgrounds, or perhaps a flaw of some sort, that makes them seem more human. This way, instead of seeing an amazing, all-powerful being overcome this struggle, we're seeing that kid who got bullied in the school halls, and had to work and even endure pain to become a hero, much as Spider-Man had to. This is probably why superheroes appeal especially to those who are considered nerds. These people often suffer bullying as children, and it feels good for them to see someone with that same background rise up and become someone important who everyone looks up to. Most importantly, these people choose to use their powers to do good, which brings me to my third main point. Superheroes make our world a better place. Even if we're only seeing them on pages or screens, they inspire us to become better people. John Romaniello, a physical trainer, posted on his blog that he doesn't exercise because he wants to look impressive or reach impressive goals, though those are perks. He exercises because it's about being strong enough to help Bernadette to carry groceries for my mom or help a friend move. To this man, superheroes are a standard to strive for, and they inspire him to make himself better. Another way superheroes can inspire us is through feminism. While most superheroes are male, there are female superheroes. And according to Linda Black, PhD, seeing these female superheroes can inspire girls of all ages to reach out, grab a hold of their lives, and make themselves into whatever they choose to be. And perhaps the best example of making yourself what you choose to be can be found in Batman. Batman isn't a genetically engineered super soldier like Captain America, or the last Kryptonian like Superman. But he does train until he's strong enough to be considered a superhero, and he uses his wit to fight crime. While most of us don't have the motivation Batman did, the murder of his parents, we can still choose to make ourselves stronger and do good in the world. As an unknown person once said, there are no super people, just tremendous problems dealt with by ordinary people. We should all take Batman as an example and choose to make ourselves into the best version of ourselves that we can be. In conclusion, superheroes are important because they are relevant to all times, give us something to believe in, and make us better people. Sadly, these heroes are a part of fiction. However, as Phil Zimbardo, social scientist and expert on heroes, once said, the most important heroes in our society are the average, everyday people who lack superpowers, but stand up and do the right thing when called to do so. We can all be heroes.
Guess what? Each of us possesses superpowers that can make us look great and competent, improve our relationships, and reduce our stress. This same superpower can make us feel as good as enjoying a stack of high-quality chocolate, without the calories, or even finding $25,000 in your coat pocket. This superpower is cross-cultural and understood by all of us. So, what is the superpower that we all possess? A smile. As we grow older, we tend to smile less and less. According to a March 2011 edition of Forbes, children tend to smile up to 400 times per day. Well, 30% of us smile more than 25 times a day, and 14% of us smile less than 5 times a day. With all the benefits of smiling, I think it's time we put smiles back in our lives. Today, I will explain the negative effects of frowning, the positives to smiling, and give you ways that you can put smiles back in your life. To begin, if you are not smiling, you are most likely frowning, and this can lead to some negative effects. According to smile experts, the most physically notable side effect to frowning is tension in the face muscles. The best case scenario is that this only causes frown lines and headaches, but at its worst can cause tooth and jaw pain, especially if the jaw is clenched. Aside from physical effects, frowning can also lead to adverse effects on the brain. For example, you may think that when someone is frowning, it is because they are perceiving something negative. While this may be true some of the time, the connection between the face and the brain is actually a two-way street. This means that your facial expression can actually change how the brain processes information. In a recent study by the University of Wisconsin-Madison, 40 people were treated with botulinum toxin, also known as Botox. This treatment deactivated the muscles in the forehead, leaving the subjects unable to frown. The leader of the project, David Habas, with a PhD in psychology, asked the test subjects to read an array of statements before and after the test. Some of the statements were happy, like, the water park is refreshing on a hot summer day. But others were sad, like, you open your email inbox on your birthday to find no new emails. According to David Tenenbaum, the results showed no change in the time needed for the subjects to understand the happy sentences. But after Botox treatment, the test subjects took much more time to understand the angry and sad sentences. There's a saying that when you smile, the whole world smiles with you. But actually, this study suggests the opposite. When you're not frowning, the whole world seems less angry and less sad. Aside from short-term effects on the brain, frowning can also lead to some long-term effects on the brain. According to smile experts, frowning can lead to feelings of discontentment, anger, and frustration. This in turn causes the brain to release cortisol, the stress chemical. The higher the stress, the lower the life expectancy. So if you want to avoid stress and increase your life expectancy, consider turning that frown upside down. As you can see, there are no positive benefits to frowning, while smiling can positively impact so many aspects of our lives. One positive aspect is a better well-being. This is explained by Eric Savitz from Forbes. In Savitz's study at UC Berkeley, the smiles of students in old yearbooks were measured. Then the students were tracked for an additional 30 years, measuring their well-being and success throughout their lives. According to Savitz, by measuring the smiles, researchers are able to predict how fulfilling and long-lasting their marriages would be, how they would score on standardized tests of well-being and general happiness, and how inspiring they would be to others. According to the study, the students with the widest smiles consistently ranked highest in all these categories. Another benefit to smiling is a longer life. This is shown in a 2010 Wayne State University study. The study examined baseball cards of Major League players from 1952 and compared their smiles to the longevity of their lives. The players that did not smile lived an average of 72.9 years, while the players that did smile lived an average of 79.9 years. This study concludes that smiling can add time to your life, and in this case, up to 5 years. After looking at the negative effects of frowning and the positives to smiling, it is clear that we need to add more smiles in our lives. But how can we do that in our stress-filled day? Well, in the article, The Secrets to Smiling More Often, the first suggestion is to smile first thing when you wake up. This is a great way to start your day. You're also going to need to remind yourself that you're going to smile more throughout the day. You should also do this in the morning. The best way to help you smile more is by creating cues. For example, when you enter an office building, see a certain model of car, or get home from work, try smiling. This will help you to smile so much more often. And lastly, smile at everyone you see. This will make you and the receiver feel good. In conclusion, we all need to use our superpower to enjoy the benefits of smiling, instead of the negative effects of frowning. It's hard to imagine how a simple gesture could positively impact so many aspects of our lives, including making it longer. I think Mother Teresa puts it best. I will never understand all the good that a simple smile can accomplish.